Okay, what's going on, everybody? So, a couple days ago, I made a prediction about what the storms were going to do. And 2 days later, I kind of had them backwards. I had Marco hitting the Galveston area as a category one, maybe a weak category two, and Laura hitting Mobile, Alabama area as a category three. Well, the strength hasn't really changed, but the position has changed. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Uh, but I'm going to show you satellite views, infrared view of the two storms, and I'm going to also show you what my path was 2 days ago compared to the path that the models are predicting today or tonight. So let's get into that. And I'm going to show you all that, what's going on. All right, so let's look at the models or the predictions that I made for the two storms 2 days ago versus today. So if you see this red line here, this is the predicted path that I made for Laura. I had it going north of the islands, avoiding a lot of land, and even missing Florida, getting into the Gulf and strengthening and headed up to Mobile. Now let's look at the predicted path for Laura today. This is what I'm predicting, not what the National Weather Service is predicting. But I'm going to, later on in this video, I'm going to show you the satellite image, the infrared image, and talk about the predictions I have for it there. But this pink circle, this is the current position of Laura. This pink line is what I see it doing. It's going to skirt south of Cuba, crossing over this little bit of land. It's still going to stay a tropical storm about right here, where it's going to start to strengthen when it gets into those warm waters of the Gulf and cause it to increase in strength and become a hurricane. Now, as it goes through the Gulf and those warm waters, it's going to strengthen even more. And I believe that it's going to hit the Galveston area as a category three, possibly a category four, or maybe even a category five before heading north. So that's what 2 days ago versus today for Laura. Now let's look at Marco. Now the blue line is the predicted path that I had for Marco, skirting the Yucatan Peninsula between Yucatan and Cuba, more closer to the Yucatan Peninsula, which it did. And as soon as it got into the Gulf, I had it strengthening to category one and coming over here to Galveston as a strong category one, maybe a weak category two. Well, the green circle here, it represents Marco, Hurricane Marco. And right now, this is the current position at this hour from the latest data that I've seen. And it's making a northerly track. And I'm going to get into what the models say as far as the predicted path, what the computer models are saying. But these are my predictions. But I see it going north to around Mobile, Alabama, maybe the panhandle of Florida, and before heading off to the east. Now let's take a look at the computer models of what they got them at this hour. And we're going to take a look here. And as you can see, this blue circle is Laura. They're predicting the same thing if it's skirting south of the islands over this warm water here and got a little bit of land. Now, right where it is, there's mountains, and usually storms don't like mountains, it tears them apart. But Laura is held together pretty well. But I see it skirting the south of Cuba, soaking up all that warm water before it hit land here. But it's still going to stay a tropical storm until it gets about right here in the Gulf. Once it gets there, from what I've seen, anywhere from a category 2 to possibly a category 5. And they say it's going to continue north. It's going to have little resistance since Marco is moving through. And they're saying around Lake Charles, possibly Houston. It's still a little ways out, so it's hard to say what path that it's going to take because it could change. Now, when I made the predictions, these predictions here, the red and blue, those were a couple days out. And things changed. Laura wobbled a little bit and went south. Marco kind of did the same thing here, except for once it got here, it headed north. And I'm going to show you why it headed north in a moment. But let's get back to the path that the Weather Service has it taking. And as you can see, Laura is going to hit southwest Louisiana, possibly eastern Texas. And it could stretch all the way over to Mississippi and Alabama. It's still far out. Whereas Marco is a Category 1 hurricane and is closer to land. Now, they're predicting it's going to make a left turn. They're making a left turn. Sorry, had to do the Bubba J thing from Jeff Dunham. But they're saying it's going to make a left turn and kind of go into the New Orleans area as possibly a weak Category 1, maybe a tropical storm, and head off to the east. Now, they're also saying that the two storms could interact as Marco gets about right here. Laura will be about right here, and I forget the name of the term that they use, but they're going to possibly interact if they do that. But that is the model. Now, why I'm seeing Marco, rather than making this left turn and going, rather than making that left turn and it's going straight and then up to the east, is because, see this white line here? This is the wind shear. And I see the wind kind of circling around and down and back up, and it's pushing that storm to the east more. I don't see it making that left turn. And it's also kind of tearing apart Marco. So their models say to the left. My model says to the north and then off to the east because it's going to push there. Now we're going to look at satellite view. We're going to look at infrared view, and you can see for yourself in the loop where the storm is possibly headed, and we're going to look into all that. All right, so now we're going to look at the satellite image. We're going to look at the infrared. We're going to look at water vapor for the two storms. Now, we're not going to bother with the Atlantic or the East Pacific thing because the Atlantic shows a wider view of the whole Atlantic, and it's hard to tell about the storms. So we're going to look at first the satellite geocolor of the two storms. We're going to go to that right here. And as you can see here, there's Marco, there's Laura. Now, as you can see, that wind shear is coming down again and then coming back up. And that's what's pushing Marco more to the north and the east. And as you can see, probably right about here is Mobile, Alabama. Now they say it's going to make a left turn. But looking at the satellite and the loop, I don't see it making that turn. I see it continuing north, possibly Mobile, Alabama, possibly the Panhandle of Florida. But it's still making that northerly track. I don't see it making that left turn unless it makes an abrupt left turn. But as you can see, the wind shear is kind of coming down and back up this way, pushing it that way. Now, Marco is a Category 1 hurricane, but it doesn't look very impressive. No really eye wall or anything like that. So I think it's going to stay at Category 1. I don't see it really strengthening too much, but it's going to hit, I believe, Mobile, Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida. Now, it's still a day out, at least 12 hours out. But by tomorrow morning, this area of the Gulf Coast could see the winds, the storm surge, the rain bands are already starting to come in. But again, I see it making that northerly track, and you can see the wind shear pushing all the clouds off to the east. So, like I said, it's going to make that northerly track before headed off to the east. And I'm going to just zoom in, kind of not zoom in, but show the Marco area, and you can see all the clouds streaming up to the east because of that wind shear. Now, because of Marco already moving through, you can see this wind shear kind of lifting and headed back to the north. That's where it's going to make it favorable for Laura, which is right here. And this is from the National Oceanic Administration. But you can see Laura here. It's right over that little part of Cuba that I showed you earlier in my predicted models and the computer models. But it looks like it's still holding pretty good strength. The eye is about right here, so you can see that the eye is here. You got the winds kind of curving around this way, and you can see the bands, and it's trying to get a more condensed form. But until we get into the Gulf Coast, that's where it's going to really get that form. But right now, it's a much larger storm, as you can see. But I still see it headed south of the islands. You can't really tell here because it looks like it might be headed a little bit north. But I still think it's going to hit this warm water just south of Cuba and keep going south and up into this general area, southwest Louisiana, East Texas, Houston area, Galveston area. So it's still a few days out. I think they predict Thursday. But that is the satellite view of the two storms. Now let's go back here and let's look at the infrared. And let's zoom out here. Now this is where you're going to see, Hurricane, I almost wanted to say Harvey, but Hurricane Marco. And you don't see those darker colors. So that means that it's kind of losing strength a little bit, but it's not that really that strong of a storm. And as you can see, I don't see it making that left turn into New Orleans. I'm seeing Mobile, Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida, as you can see right here. That's where everything looks like it's headed. And that wind shear coming back up and pushing. But as Marco pushes through more, that is going to lift and go back, which opens the door for Laura to go south of Cuba into the Gulf Coast, strengthen, and anywhere from, I'm saying, the cone that they got is anywhere from Corpus Christi all the way to Mobile, Alabama. Possibilities where it could hit. I mean, the cone is basically from Houston to Mississippi, Alabama line. That area is under a hurricane watch warning, I believe, especially with Marco right now. But again, I don't see it making that left turn. I'm seeing it continue north into Mobile, Alabama, into the Panhandle of Florida. Again, with Laura, you can see these darker colors. That's where about right where the eye is, right there. And you can see those darker convection. The higher cloud tops are that darker color. That's a colder temperature, which is helping this storm stay pretty strong, even crossing the Antilles. But again, I see it going south of Cuba, and you can kind of make out the path that the winds are pushing it, which is to the south. And right up here, and I'm going to go up a little bit, you got a high right here, a big circling high, which is kind of pushing that Marco to wrap around that high. Now, unless that high moves over Florida, that's what could push Marco off to the west. Now, in my previous segment with the predicted path, I said to the east. I meant to say west. But unless that high moves over into Florida in the next 12 hours, I see Marco hitting Mobile, Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida, rather than Louisiana. So Louisiana might be spared from Marco, except for maybe some storm surges, which they might be getting right now, maybe some outer bands that they might get as well. As far as Laura goes, again, there's that dark convection coloring the higher cloud tops, and I see it pushing off to the west. I think last I heard it was moving at 18 miles per hour, which is fairly fast for a storm, but it is moving to the west northwest. Again, it's going to cross Cuba. Now, there is another path that it could take, and that is headed west, more west, and kind of headed into the Gulf over open, warm waters like Marco did between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, which could push it further west towards Corpus Christi. But again, their cone is from Corpus Christi all the way to Mobile, Alabama, possibilities of where it could hit, but it's still a good distance out. And I don't know why I think it just refreshed. NOAA just refreshed their site, I believe. But again, as you can see, Laura's right here. There's the Antilles right there. So I'm seeing it skirting south of Cuba, which there's a lot of warm waters here. And then Marco, I still see it going north. So let's look at the water vapor for that area. And as you can see, this is the cloud water vapor in the clouds. And you can see this mass kind of coming down and around. Well, that is that wind shear that is pushing Marco more to the east. And then this wind shear is this water vapor, this wind, again, the highs up here, it's kind of keeping Laura to the south of Cuba, and you can see those darker greens, or those lighter greens, I should say. That's more water vapor in the clouds. Now, I don't claim to be a weatherman. I don't know a lot about weather, but I do love it. I love looking at radar images and seeing what it possibly could do. So again, my path, looking at shortwave infrared. Now it shows darker colors here, but this is a shortwave infrared. But you can still see it moving to the north, northeast, not to the west. Whereas Laura is a much larger storm and pushing off to the west, northwest. Now, Marco's set to hit land tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. I'm going to be paying attention to the weather, but tomorrow, like I've been doing for the past few days. But again, landfall right about here for Marco, and Laura again coming through here. Marco kind of cleared the path for Laura, which is going to be a bigger storm, and it's going to go more right in here. Southwest Louisiana, East Texas. Now that's what, I mean, Lake Charles is where they got Laura kind of possibly going, but again, that cone stretches, or some cones I've seen Houston all the way to like New Orleans, but others talking about anywhere from Corpus Christi all the way to Mobile, Alabama. Again, it's still a few days out. I think it's supposed to hit this area around Thursday. And I don't think they're going to interact like some might say, unless Marco stalls, which I don't see it stalling. But Laura is the storm that's going to be the one to watch. Because, I mean, there are some spaghetti models that push it to back up to the east and central Florida, but not very many. I'm still predicting the Galveston, Beaumont, possibly Lake Charles area. That is my general area where I see it hitting. So anywhere there is where it could hit. All right, so that's my forecast predictions, what the weather models show, what the satellite infrared shows. And again, I see Marco hitting the Mobile, Alabama, Florida Panhandle by tomorrow afternoon. Whereas Laura, I see hitting the Houston, Galveston, Lake Charles area, somewhere around there, as a strong category 3 anywhere from a 3 up to a 5. I'm saying probably about a strong 3 into a 4. I don't see it really getting to a category 5, but things could change. But that's what I see. As far as Marco goes, I see it staying as a category 1. The only time we'll tell if it weakens before it get into the coast and get back down to a tropical storm. But it's still going to produce some heavy winds, 60 plus mile per hour winds, great big storm surges for the Alabama, Florida Panhandle coast, even as far west as New Orleans. So that's what I see. I will update everybody tomorrow afternoon on what I see going on. I'm going to keep an eye on the radar. I'm going to keep an eye on the predictions for the storms. I'm going to keep an eye on what they are doing. But those are my predictions for the storms compared to what the National Weather Service says and news organization, weather organizations say. So that's what I see happening with those two storms. So I'm going to keep looking at the weather because I love looking at weather and following this kind of stuff. Now, last time I predicted a storm where it was going to hit, that was Hurricane Katrina. Now, 2 days ago, I was wrong as far as the paths go. I had them mixed up. I had Marco going to Galveston, whereas I had Laura hitting Mobile. They switched up. As far as strength goes, they pretty much stayed the same in my prediction. And you can see that post on my Facebook page that I made a bold prediction 2 days ago of the path and back when they were still tropical depressions. So if you're living in the New Orleans, Louisiana area, all the way to Corpus Christi, keep an eye out on Laura because that's going to probably be the worst storm. And bug behind me, I got to get it. But keep looking at those areas and keep an eye out for Laura. As far as Marco, if you live in the Mobile, Alabama, Florida Panhandle, keep an eye out on Marco. And keep looking at keeping an eye out on these storms because these storms can change at any moment. So until tomorrow afternoon when I update what these storms are doing, have a good night.